Welcome back to Oxnard, California. Inside Cowboys training camp driven by Ford rolls on from training camp 2023 alongside Haley Sutton. I'm Kyle Yeomans as the Dallas Cowboys now have one in the books. A preseason game going in favor of Jacksonville 28-23 on Saturday afternoon from AT&T Stadium. The team now back here on the West Coast getting ready for preseason week 2 against Seattle this upcoming Saturday. But takeaways from the game, lots of reps, lots of valuable reps for the young guys on this roster, both offensively and defensively. What were your main takeaways?
Yeah, I thought there was a lot of positives, like you mentioned. Obviously, the score doesn't necessarily reflect that, but the good thing about preseason games that I continue to stress is that it's just that. It's preseason, it's extended practice, and it's a really good opportunity for these guys to get those reps. I did have a chance to catch up with some of the veterans in the locker room, CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup in particular, and I asked them, first off, how nice is it to not have a camera in your face after a game in the locker room, and they loved it. But they were so complimentary of what these young guys did. CeeDee Lamb even told me the fact that our 2s were running against Jacksonville's 1s and making plays says a lot about the future of this team.
One of those plays was Wanye Thomas on an interception. You also had a couple takeaways from Jacksonville on Dallas. Dallas giving up the ball in the red zone. Rico Dowdle with a fumble. Kevontae Turpin fumbled as a punt returner. But for the most part, it was clean outside of the takeaways. Is that going to be a number one emphasis for Mike McCarthy going into this week of practice?
Yeah, we know how much Mike talks about ball security, ball security, ball security. And you have to remember, too, for a lot of these guys, they haven't played real football in quite some time. Rico Dowdle, a guy who really hasn't seen a lot of game action in quite some time. So it was just nice to see the potential of what this team could look like, shaking off the rust, getting back into the groove of playing some football. And again, as we mentioned, a lot of positives to take away from that, but the biggest would be that experience. So going into Saturday's game, they know what not to do, and they know how to address that going forward.
Speaking of potential, some of these draft picks got a first chance in a Cowboys uniform to really shine. Deuce Vaughn being one of them. 6th-round pick out of Kansas State, and man, was he electric. He was fun to watch.
That spin cycle that he put the Jacksonville defensive line in was incredible to watch. But I'm just really glad that the whole world got an opportunity to see what we get to see out of Deuce Vaughn every day out here. And what I love the most about Deuce is that anything he's asked to do, he does it. You saw him line up back to return some kicks on kickoff and punt return. You saw him lining up in the backfield, taking the snaps, going into the trenches to make plays, and he was successful at it. It shows why he was an All-American in college.
What did you think about Will Grier and how he fared in this one?
I thought it was a mixed bag, but what I will say about Will Grier is that I loved that he never got himself down. Anytime he made a mistake, he went over to the sideline, he had conversations with Dak Prescott and Cooper Rush, and then he went out and fixed it. Particularly on that drive with Jalen Tolbert, it wasn't clean, it wasn't perfect, but it ended with a touchdown, and that's all you can ask for from your quarterback.
Yeah, certainly something to build for Will Grier and company. He came in, had 2 touchdowns in the game, did have the 1 interception, still things to grow for the third-string quarterback as we speak. But when we come back, we join Nick Harris up here on the broadcast, and we get Nick's introspective on what he saw from AT&T Stadium on Saturday.
Inside Cowboys Training Camp presented by Ford is brought to you by AT&T, official sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys. Sleep Number, the official sleep and wellness partner of the Dallas Cowboys. And by your Texas Ford dealers. Ford is the best in Texas. Go Cowboys! This segment is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors, official sporting goods retailer of the Dallas Cowboys.
A lot of confidence, just because of you never know. It's a question mark coming in whenever you're about to play your first NFL game. It's like that when you play college. Wondering if you could adapt to the speed, wondering if you could do everything and be able to be successful. So it gives me a lot of confidence, but also understanding that it's just a preseason game. Just the first of many, and we got 2 more, and we got work that needs to be put in throughout the week to get ready for this next one. And now I'm ready to move on to the next one.
Deuce Vaughn following an impressive debut in a Cowboys uniform, brought to you by Sleep Number. As we welcome you back into Inside Cowboys Training Camp driven by Ford with Haley Sutton. I'm Kyle Yeomans, now joined by Nick Harris of DallasCowboys.com. And Nick, lots to love on the offensive side of the ball, including Deuce Vaughn, what he was able to do in his first game as a Cowboy. What else stood out to you on Mike McCarthy's first day as a play caller?
Yeah, the electricity was buzzing in AT&T Stadium yesterday whenever Deuce Vaughn touched the ball. And it started with his very first touch on a kick return return that got him out to about the 25-yard line, but the chants started to come in, deuce, deuce. And talking about his second half offensively, it was a lot of fun. I think a lot of people came away impressed. A healthy 50 yards of rushing on, I believe, 8 carries. A great offensive night for him in his preseason debut, and he was talking about it after the game. He was like, I don't even hear the crowd when I'm playing. I'm so locked in. You just love to hear that from Deuce. But talking about Mike McCarthy in his first game as play caller, we saw a lot of great things from Cooper Rush and Will Grier, but I don't feel like we saw the entire playbook. You know, they don't want to expand everything just yet in the preseason, right?
It wasn't a win for the Cowboys maybe on the scoreboard, but I think it was a win for the defense, especially when you look at what Wanye Thomas did right out of the gate. Who stood out to you on that side of the ball?
Yeah, Wanye Thomas on Trevor Lawrence's very first pass attempt of the entire season, intercepted it right down the sideline. It was a great athletic play from Wanye to go ahead and close and get that pick. But talking about defensive standouts, I think it has to start with Damone Clark, flying sideline to sideline, commanding the middle linebacker, wearing the green dot last night. He did a fantastic job with about 5 or 6 tackles and played about a quarter and a half before he was pulled, but also DeMarvion Overshown in that second level. He was fantastic last night. You
mentioned the second teamers for Dallas going up against some of the first team for Jacksonville and getting very valuable reps before facing ultimately the second team of Jacksonville really into that second quarter, which is, by the way, when Dallas had a little success on the defensive side. With those valuable reps, how much growth do you think this team can continue to build on the depth of that defense?
Yeah, it's big time, and I think I really like the strategy by Mike McCarthy and the rest of the staff to sit a few of these veterans that are already well-seasoned, get these young guys involved, and let them play a quarter and a half, let them see the first team, let them see the second team, and it kind of lets them know where their depth is, not only on the team, but with themselves. These guys going against the first team, they held their own, had an interception, flying sideline to sideline in the second level, and then they were able to match that in the second quarter and limit them to 0 points whenever that second team came in. So I think it was a big-time job by that quote-unquote second team that came in technically as the first team last night. They did a great job.
We know Mike McCarthy loves to throw around the term complementary football. It's what he wants this Dallas Cowboys roster to look like at all times, and a part of that is obviously special teams. How special were they last night?
Yeah, I think on the special scale, you could put him about 6.5. Brandon Aubrey, he started off the day really strong, had a couple of touchbacks that went out of the back of the end zone, and whenever we talk to John Fossil, that's a big thing he emphasizes. He wants to see that leg power on the kickoffs. But talking about his kicking performance, he had a 29-yard field goal, and he went 2 for 3 on his extra point attempts, the one missing wide left. And that's a tough break for a guy who mostly had a pretty good day. But, kicker, that's a tough job to have. It's a forgiveless job. And, he's going to have to bounce back and have a perfect day in Seattle next week.
Yeah, same could really be said for Kevontae Turpin. He had 1 punt return, the Pro Bowler put it on the ground. Another thing that John Fossil and really Mike McCarthy stresses is holding on to the football, continuing that ball security. So things to work on from preseason game number 1, but lots of positives with Nick Harris here on Inside Cowboys Training Camp, driven by Ford. When we come back, we'll take a look at the schedule ahead and what to expect in preseason week number 2 from Oxnard.
This segment was brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors, official sporting goods retailer of the Dallas Cowboys.
Go Cowboys!
Welcome back into Inside Cowboys Training Camp, driven by Ford. Haley Sutton, I'm Kyle Yeomans, and a busy week ahead for the Cowboys as preseason game number 2 is now on the horizon against Seattle, 9 p.m. kickoff on Saturday. But before that, they hit the practice field.
That's right. A little bit different of a schedule this week. They had off today, a nice little break after Saturday's game. They'll get back to it a little bit tomorrow with a little bit of a walkthrough before 2 more padded practices Tuesday and Wednesday. Thursday they'll have that mock game, and then it's back on the plane, continuing up the West Coast side to Seattle. But it's exciting just to continue to see the growth in this preseason.
That's the thing, is you don't get to wait for Cowboys football anymore. You don't have to wait
for
Cowboys football. From here on out, we're getting football almost every week throughout the regular season, and we'll be here to cover it for you on DallasCowboys.com. For Haley Sutton and our entire Dallas Cowboys crew, I'm Kyle Yeoman saying so long. We'll see you tomorrow with more Inside Cowboys Training Camp, driven by Ford.
Inside Cowboys Training Camp, presented by Ford, was brought to you by AT&T, official sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys. Sleep Number, the official sleep and wellness partner of the Dallas Cowboys. And by your Texas Ford dealers. Ford is the best in Texas.